Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Today I welcome you all to our roundtable discussion on Global Trends 2026. The moderator for today is Major General A.N.M. Muniruzzaman, NDC PSC retired, President, Bangladesh Institute of Peace and Security Studies, BIPSS, and the honorable speakers for today are Dr. Saima Ahmed, Assistant Professor, Department of International Relations, University of Dhaka, Mr. Parvez Karim Abbasi, Assistant Professor, Department of Economics, East West University, and Executive Director, Center for Governance Studies, and Mr. Shafqat Munir, Head of the Bangladesh Center for Terrorism Research, BCTR, and Senior Research Fellow at BIPSS. Now I would like to request the moderator to continue with the rest of the session. Thank you.
Thank you. Distinguished participants, a very warm welcome to all of you to our this morning's roundtable on Global Trends 2026. This is the first event of the year, so I would also like to take this opportunity to wish everybody a very happy new year. As we all know that tectonic shifts are taking place in the global system, starting from trade, economy, technology, global security, everything that affects the international system. So therefore, the theme of our conference today is Global Trends 2026, which is both timely and necessary. We are living in an era of acceleration. Fast-paced changes are taking place in economy, in environmental impacts, in technology, in trade, and lately, in some of the fundamental changes and shifts that we are seeing in how we do business with nations. So therefore, as a small southern country, Bangladesh needs to understand the complexities of the change. Because the change affects everybody, big and small, so we are not away from the system. One of the most visible forces shaping 2026, in my understanding, is technological innovation. Advanced developments in artificial intelligence, automation, digital connectivity are transforming the way we learn, govern, and interact. These technologies offer remarkable opportunities of greater productivity, expanded access to knowledge, and new solutions to complex problems. At the same time, they raise important questions about ethics, skills, inclusion, and trust. It is important for us to understand the complexities of impacts that these new technologies will have on our lives, on the way we interact with one another, the way we govern ourselves. Because unless we do that, these technologies can become disruptive technologies. Another defining trend of growing urgency of sustainability and climate action. Environmental pressures are no longer distant concerns, they are present realities affecting economies, supply chains, public health, and social and political stability. Another major trend that we identify and we cannot ignore is the evolving geopolitical and economic landscapes. Shifts in global power, trade patterns, security dynamics are reshaping the international cooperation and competition. In an interconnected world, no longer our sector operates in isolation. Understanding these dynamics is essential for managing the risk, fostering collaboration, and identifying new opportunities in a changing global space. We are also concerned about various protected conflicts that are raging around the world, from Gaza to Ukraine, now to Venezuela, to other parts of the world. We need to understand the triggers of the conflict, we need to understand how the complex these conflicts can be managed without acceleration. All this needs a deeper understanding of the various complex issues that we are dealing with today. And to do that, as you heard from Biti in the beginning, we have an excellent panel today, starting with Dr. Saima, Mr. Parvez Karim Abbasi, and then Shafqat Munir. So without further ado, I shall now turn it over to our panelists, and with you, Dr. Saima, to start the panel. Thank you.
Distinguished guests, Honorable Chair here, President of BIPSS, and all my respected colleagues, very warm welcome and greetings from me. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank first BIPSS to invite me here and give me an opportunity to speak about the global trends of 2026 regarding the geostrategic situations that the entire Earth is facing now, all the countries are facing now. I would like to first actually talk about the geostrategic practices. Here I'm going to use the word with the meaning that when a country formulates its national strategy, when it uses its geographic location, its resources, its geopolitical environment and all that to increase its military, economic and diplomatic conditions and planning. In this way, I'm going to use the term geostrategic practice of a country. Now, I think that there are significant changes that has happened in the global scenario in the recent times, especially from 2025 to 2026. Three very distinct characteristics have been developed in my view. One is that there is a trend amongst the major powers, the global powers, to use unilateral military actions, undermining international organizations like the UN and the Security Council's activities and the practices and the norms that have been there. There is also a trend of undermining international law, especially regarding respecting territorial integrity and sovereignty, the use of coercive realpolitik diplomacy have become very open, and I think that there is also a trend of undermining multilateralism and preferring more kind of bilateral coercive diplomatic relations and tactics. To support this view, I want to mention a couple of developments that happened in international relations recently. One is that stands out very prominently is the Venezuelan president's capture by the US government. This is unprecedented. This has never happened before, and it raises the question of multilateralism as well as Article 2.4 of the UN Charter, which says that a country cannot really violate the territorial integrity of another country. Although there were justifications for the operation in Venezuela that it was done to stop narcotics and drug dealings, and it also would create kind of a new regime that would be better for the people of Venezuela. But the questions that has been raised is that how Venezuela actually stood out as one of the conflict zones of the world. A lot of the times, these things are not very explicitly expressed by the US government or other officials, but this time it's a change because US official statements talked about the geo-economic interest that the US had in the regime change and the way Maduro was captured and brought to New York. USA talked explicitly about taking over the oil reserves and businesses and companies, how it's going to help USA to have a strategic leverage over OPEC and also infrastructure rehabilitation and all that, and how economically USA is going to benefit. Another example, and I would say a very recent development of coercive realpolitik diplomacy and undermining multilateralism by the global powers came out and became very explicit in the recent talks about Greenland, where US government, President of the US, kept on pressuring Europe to give away Greenland to the US, and asked this as a kind of a gesture that USA expects because USA helped the European countries in NATO and giving them like a security umbrella. And many European countries remained under that umbrella and enjoyed the security, and that was the reasoning that came up. Now, as international relations scholars we need to look at is that there are strategic kind of assets in Greenland that makes it very lucrative for the US government. Like it can have the space base, it can have missile early warning system, and also rare earth elements are there in Greenland that can be captured. Vast deposits of rare earth elements are there in Greenland. Now, although USA did not say that it's going to have a military kind of operation against Greenland, but it has sacrificed the friendship of its allies in Europe. The way we have looked at the World Economic Forum's speech that President Trump brought out, it showed how conflicting interests the US and its allies has, the NATO allies has over Greenland. This has also created a new trend. In many ways, it shows a very big drift within NATO, where many European countries, especially France and Germany, they are thinking of having Europe's or developing Europe's own military kind of capabilities and reduce their reliance on the US, especially in case US withdraws from NATO. It also confirms US's less interest in NATO when the White House announced that it's going to have limited funding to NATO and limited kind of involvement. Just in recent times we have seen that. So this is another big change in terms of exploring multilateralism and also respecting international rules and norms based, which actually US developed within these alliance systems and through the international organizations. Hard power also had been used against Iran once unilateral action was done. The justification was that Iran was developing nuclear weapons and USA wanted to help Israel. But the change within this is nothing new. US has a very long history of friendship with Israel, but what is new is that US never really directly involved in military actions in that way before. So this is something new that we are seeing, that unilateral action has been done against a country. Also, there is a big change in the alliance structures. USA has become a very, I think, more aligned with Russian President Putin, and the Soviet era conflict has faded entirely. In case of Ukraine war, although USA helped Ukraine in terms of fighting the war by giving it arms and ammunition as well as a lot of assistance, but now when it has come time to resolve the war and find a ceasefire or a kind of a solution, it is very evident that the US has moved more towards Russian position and is offering more friendship to President Putin, and instead of trying to take the side of Ukraine. So this is a kind of a big change where we are looking at in terms of Ukraine-Russia war that is going on. And in the Middle East, USA has taken the same position it previously had. It maintained its alliance with Saudi Arabia, Israel, and UAE. But the change is that in 2026, I think that there is a change, and US has come out more openly about creating like a golden dome kind of a thing, and more openly taking this the alliance it has with or the friendship it has with Saudi Arabia, Israel, and UAE to the next level, like making it stronger, and even thinking of carrying out any kind of military actions that is necessary to set Iran back from its course of actions. These are the changes that I see, but I also think that geographical locations are influencing economic policies of the global powers. The tariff war that has started it's entirely based upon these kinds of geopolitical and geostrategic considerations. To tackle the competition with China, the US government has announced a lot of tariffs on a whole bunch of nations, the entire nations. Also, US has come out of about 64 international treaties and organizations which includes organization and all the climate change and environmental treaties that has been completed over the years. So apart from that, it also has, it doesn't seem like US wants to invest or spend money that goes to multilateral forums or that would help many countries. It's looking at more protectionist kind of economic policies and has taken many protectionist policies by imposing like 15%, 30%, or even 100% tariffs on many countries, and many countries happen to be US allies. So this is a big change. Previously, the US never had this amount of protectionist policy to counter economic competition with China or any other nation. So this is kind of a new thing that we are seeing. In terms of Bangladesh's position, I think Bangladesh needs to find ways where, and many other developing countries and those countries which doesn't have enough economic or military power, need to find ways where they can bring the respect for international law and multilateral cooperation, international cooperation back to the agenda, and try to form stronger alliances with those countries that actually uphold those. In that way, I think that Bangladesh can have like very meaningful foreign policy, and its existence is going to be protected. I will end my this speech and discussion here by indicating a positive note that we have seen very recently, where European countries explicitly, very openly criticized US policy of undermining international law and international cooperation and multilateralism, and expressed their willingness to actually work for those, even going to the extent of saying that China is welcome to Europe. So I think that these are the changes, and it's kind of a positive change too that we are looking at. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Saima, for these opening remarks, very pertinent to the present conditions. The key takeaways that I see from your presentation at the beginning is that nations will interact with one another, keeping hardcore national interests in mind. And in this aspect, many nations will be absolutely brutal in the way they protect their national interest. We also see the beginning of interstate relations where coercive diplomacy will become perhaps the norm in many cases. We are worried about the changes that we see about reliance and dependability on the rule-based international order, which is about to change. And particularly for the countries in the global south, we need to take a stock of this. I see a definite change in the way countries are trying to reposition themselves. So we see a pattern of realignment again, and definite signs of fragmentation on the existing structures. So please keep this in mind as we go on to discuss more. And I now give the floor to Parvez Karim Abbasi from East West University.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Good morning. Apologies, I'm suffering from a little bit of cold, so it seems I'm perennially ailing like our Bangladeshi economy, but that's something for later. So I've been told that I'll have 10 to 12 minutes, so let me set the ball rolling by giving you a preview of the areas that I hope to touch. First one is that, again, the salient global trends that I think will be particularly important for 2026. Number two is a very brief touch or discussion on the multilateral versus multipolar world order, and my contestation is that essentially what we are seeing now is nothing novel. It has been continuing for a long, long period of time. It's just that the pretense or hypocrisy has been done away with. Number three is obviously the issue of, again, alternate platforms to US economic and military, I won't say hegemony, but again, dominance. So what is the long life for that? Number four is the securitization aspect, which will come to dominate geopolitical, geoeconomic, trade and commerce discussions for the next 10 years or so. And the number five and number six is, again, my own, what would I say, hypothesis because, again, it has not been borne out. But with a certain degree of research is the two new trends that we'll be looking is selective application of Wilsonian self-determination in US foreign policy in the coming years, and the formation of regional blocs, and the long life of Abraham Accord. So these are the six aspects that we'll be focusing with. So coming to the first issue again, the first thing is that there are three salient trends that we see with ourselves. One is, doesn't matter if we have a so-called new Cold War or breaking down of the rules-based order, three concerns or three emerging patterns will continue to dominate how major or, again, middle economy powers or even smaller powers would be actually responding to them. One is the trend towards electrification. Number two is a trend towards digitalization. And number three is a trend towards decarbonization. Why? Because, again, the first one is that for electrification, just as of the next 4 years, there's 600 billion kilometers of electric transmission that needs, electric lines that need to be installed around the world. 600 million kilometers of electric lines and transmission lines around the world. Number two, for digitization, we are often very starstruck of digitization, but we don't think about the economic cost of this. There will be at least 3 to 7 trillion. The lowest estimate is $3 trillion. The highest estimate is $7 trillion in opening data centers in the next 5 years. Because, again, data centers are integral for AI or Bitcoin mining or digitization. And last but not the least, whether we say that, again, the global warming is a myth or not, the rapid progress of electric vehicles and, again, lower carbon footprint technology means that, again, the reliance on metals like copper, like lithium, like aluminum is going to grow around the world. I'll just give you one example. Now, by 2035, demand will outstrip supply for copper by 30%. Because you can set up a data center within 4 years, but to process mines, it requires 10 to 20 years. So the need for copper or the need for lithium, now that would be the ones that is actually dominating US economic priorities and Chinese economic priorities. So all know that China controls, one way or other, 90% of rare earth metals which is available in the global market in terms of, again, possession, in terms of extraction. And that's why countries like Argentina, Chile, and even Australia are now becoming even more important because of the lithium deposits or rare earth metal deposits. Another aspect is the newfound interest in Central Asia. Thus, we say the United Kingdom and the United States of America making inroads into an area which was traditionally considered within Russia's sphere of interest. That's my contestation. And also, very interestingly, the one country where, again, almost all the major European powers have made friendly overtures is Kazakhstan, which has huge amount of oil, gas, and rare earth metals. And an interesting corollary is Kazakhstan is one country which has shown a lot of willingness to sign on to the Abraham Accord. So again, that's the first aspect of our discussion. Now, when we talk about the multilateral versus multipolar world order, the world order has been always changing. We had an inflection point in 1918, after the end of the First World War, the Great War. We had another inflection point in 1945, after the end of the Second World War, or the Great Patriotic War, as my Russian friends are wont to say. We also had another inflection point in 1989, after the end of the Cold War. And probably we are in the throes of another, another critical inflection point, 2024, 2025. President Trump is just the harbinger, or again, the face of the change. But it has been going and growing, and it has been building speed. I would like to say that again, the former Chancellor of Germany, Olaf Scholz, I believe called it right when he said that Zeitenwende. That means again paradigm shift, or again, the idea is that a historical turning point. Probably what we are now going to see is that from at least lip service to rules-based order, we are going to see a slow transition to a multipolar world. And this is where another German comes in, and again, though I'm not a big fan of him, but Carl Schmitt, and again, a former Nazi collaborator, and I am no fan of the Nazis, but he came up with a very interesting intellectual contribution, which has again been in the discussion, which is nomos. And the one thing that he has basically focused on is great space. That means, again, regional powers are given their own special spheres of influence. And that's probably what we are seeing right now. China carving out its own sphere of influence. The US with this muscular application of Monroe policy, or Monroe Doctrine, which President Trump jokingly says as a Monroe Doctrine, or again, Russia actually indicating its areas of strategic concern are just some of the areas that we will be looking into in the future. But of course, and I would also suggest that again, the move at Venezuela, though it might actually grate at our sensibilities, international sensitivities, if you look at it from a US national security interest, now it is done in a very, I would say rather pragmatic manner, because one of the things that the US has now access to in one form is the huge oil reserves in Venezuela, second or third largest in the world. Now what it can do is that it can use it as a bargaining chip. Why? Because in recent times we have seen Saudi Arabia-led Gulf states moving away from petrodollar system, which holds the US currency status as the global currency, or the global reserve currency. So again, China insists on yuan-based payment. India is slowly going for a rupee-based payment in terms of oil purchases from the Middle East. And again, China and India have become big purchasers of Gulf oil. Now, in this case, right now, the oil market prices are pretty saturated. So in the next 3 to 4 years, if there's threat of massive oil supply from the Venezuelan reserves, which will take probably 4 to 5 years to become operational, this itself is a credible threat for the Middle Eastern countries not to shift from a petrodollar system. So again, economic concerns are also dictated by national security concerns. But that doesn't mean that the other countries are simply waiting passively. And this is the point where we are saying that alternate measures are being tried at. One very interesting approach which is being done by Russian agency is the unit experiment. So this is an alternate currency system whereby, again, the BRICS countries have shown notional interest. So 40% of the unit currency will be gold-backed. Now, what does it matter? Because again, The BRICS countries themselves, within themselves, they carry out a trade of $500 billion. So even if 50% of this trade is done via, again, the unit currency, though again President Trump has actually threatened to impose massive amount of punitive tariffs so that such a move does not materialize, what will happen is that the dollar's, unchallenged role as the global currency would gradually come under threat in the next 2 decades. And it is also very interesting that all the countries, whether it's Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, in the last 5 years, they have been stocking up on gold reserves and they have been selling down their US Treasury instruments. So there is a rebalancing of sorts. Now, if we go into the fourth aspect of what we have promised, is also the securitization aspect. Now, if you look into the securitization aspect, we often talk about, obviously, the US, because it is now still the uncontested superpower as of now. So when we talk about the USA's 2025 National Strategic Security Document or the 2026 National Defense Strategy, over there, unambiguous emphasis has been given on national security. And again, the clear perception regarding China, or again bringing a degree of balance in the Indo-Pacific. So, and of course, as a corollary, as we say, as a Trump corollary, the emphasis has also been put on, again, the application of US foreign policy to secure its own interests and prevent non-hemispheric actors from acting within the Americas. But that can be also extended as and when the USA chooses. But often we are always focused on the US, but we also miss out the other country, which often provokes, a reaction from the Americans, is the Chinese. Because often we forget that the Chinese were the first to actually tie in economics, trade, commerce, investment under the security umbrella. When President Xi Jinping came to power in 2014, he came up with the comprehensive national security concept. And you'd be surprised to know 16 Chinese ministries fall under the security agency, which is the Central State Security Commission. Even the food ministry, ladies and gentlemen, is being seen in a security lens. And to also another global trend that is coming in, only in 2024, we have seen a 9.4% real increase in real terms in spending in global defense. And out of that expenditure, US and China contributes 50% of the global defense expenditure. The US spent around 37%, China is 12%. So USA outspends China for 3-1, but the Chinese are also closing in onto the gap. And the Ukraine crisis has also waken up Europe from its long sense of slumber, and now they're making headway to meet the 5% gap or the 5% target on spending on defense. In Germany, they have actually relaxed the brakes on debt sustainability, and they are actually trying to double their spending within the next 4 years. Even in United Kingdom, Keir Starmer's government has committed to increase defense expenditure at the expense of healthcare, at the expense of development, at the expense of aid. Well, that is their national priority. But even when the US is going for a massive amount of increase in defense expenditure, it has to be financed by debt. And this is where the goal or the paramount importance of US Treasury and also US dollar currency are important. So the US will take whatever decisions it thinks is necessary to defend these two instruments, which actually ensures its global domination. And China and the rest will try to find out countervailing measures. Now the last two aspects, I know that I'm running down on time, so I'll be quick on this. Selective application of Wilsonian self-determination. We all know about Woodrow Wilson's, again, very historic concept after the end of First World War, and again, the right to self-determination. And most of the modern map around the world that we see nowadays is actually an extension of those ideas. the world is a very fragile place. I'll just name 3 places for you to think that in the future can be flashpoints. The first one is Khuzestan in Iran and Sistan-e-Balochistan, also in Iran. Khuzestan in Iran is a majority of Iran's oil is found in the Khuzestan province. The only problem is that, again, the majority of the residents in Khuzestan are actually Sunnis. And on a state level, the suppression on Sunni faith and practice is very harsh. Sunnis are not even allowed to construct mosques or even refurbish mosques. That is something that is not often aired also. And for the go into the other end of Iran, you have Sistan-e-Balochistan, which has been also the epicenter of recent uprisings against the Khamenei-led Islamist regime or the Ayatollah regime. Again, this is also a Sunni majority place, and in recent times it has seen again because of ethnic difference, because of language difference, and because of religious sectarian difference, Sistan-e-Balochistan is also up in arms. But the Sistan-e-Balochistan also could be another flashpoint, which has also, what I say, ramifications for Pakistan, because it is also culturally analogous, and it used to be politically one unit with the Balochistan province, the largest province in Pakistan. So again, in recent times, Sistan-e-Balochistan in Iran, Khuzestan in Iran, and also the Balochistan province in Pakistan are flashpoints that we need to consider in the future. Another area that we often forget is also the eastern province in Saudi Arabia. Now, this is also a very oil-rich province, and I believe this is a strange paradox of nature, that over there, the majority of the population are Shias. And one of the leading figures over there, Sheikh Nimir, was executed for, again, inciting rebellion in the last 4 years back. And Mohammed bin Salman has been trying to push ambitious economic reforms, and they've been trying to actually woo the eastern province. But Saudi Arabia has a lot of economic fragility lying beneath the surface, and also as Saudi Arabia tries to do a difficult balancing act, it is also actually moving out from the MBS-MBZ alliance. Because we know that right now, there's 2 different regional orders. One is the Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Pakistan axis, and there has been a defense agreement over there. Another one is the UAE, Mohammed bin Zayed leading the charge, UAE, Israel, and to a certain aspect, Indian alliance that is shaping up. And the last aspect of this, which is again the regional bloc formations. One thing that we often forget is the IMAC corridor, the India, Middle East, Europe, Africa corridor. And one of the things that it was actually, I believe, in a G20 summit in 2023, when IMAC was signed. Now, this is one of the regional blocs that was visualized to counter BRI. And the latest development was Israel's recognition of Somaliland, which has been backed by UAE. Is it random? I would submit it is not, because the recognition of Somaliland means that, again, Israel now doesn't have to rely on the very turbulent Red Sea area, which has been dominated by Houthis. And it can actually, the Bab el-Mandab Strait, another choke point. So they can actually bypass it, and it is no surprise that DP World, Dubai Port World, has actually invested $440 million in Berberi Port, which is again a part of Somaliland. And Ethiopia also wants to have access to the sea. So you were seeing that over here, that a sort of an alliance is coming up where there's a pushing of regional, alternate regional routes. And also there's also growing Turkish presence in Somalia, in Mogadishu. So Turkey and again, to a certain extent, Saudi Arabia on one side, in Somalia, and also in Yemen. And you have UAE and tacitly Israel on another side. So this is also another aspect that we'll be seeing. Last, we were going to say is the Abraham Accords. because this is also concomitant to IMAC. And two things are to be taken of note. When the Assad's dictatorial regime collapsed, many people rejoiced, rightfully so. And al-Shara, when he was actually, he had come to power, so a person with formerly who had a bounty of, I believe, $5 million by the Americans, he became a new face of change. In recent times, there has been the US, Israel, Syria defense or security accord. And one of the conditions that has been actually stipulated is that Syria will work to normalize relations with Israel, talk about, again, joint areas of cooperation, the Golan Heights, and eventual signing of the Abraham Accord. So we will see that the need for actually pushing Abraham Accord in the Middle East and Muslim majority countries will gain steam. And UAE is going to lead the charge. So this is a very interesting time where, again, we cannot definitely say, again, what will be the changes 10 years, 15 years, 20 years down the line. But the charge for rare earth, the charge for metals, the charge for actually holding a position of strategic choke points, the charge or the desire to take advantage of regional discontent, or actually weaponizing youth discontent, the Gen Z revolutions will continue. And we will also see that, contrary to many people's perceptions, that Russia, countries such as Russia and India, will continue to remain very important in the global scheme of things, because the situation is fluid. But the one thing that one has to say is that often people say that Donald Trump has done away with many of the aspects of consensus building, coalition formation. But I would rather contend that since the end of the World War II, especially after the 1956 Suez Crisis, the West has nothing been, and with all due respect to my non-American Western friends, but the West has been nothing but an extension of US strategic interest, whether it's the NATO, or whether, again, it is, again, the WTO, or before that, it's the GATT. So, and even Mark Carney, the current Canadian Prime Minister's speech, is a sort of mea culpa, where there was an admission of the fact that the West went along with American objectives, even despite their, again, moral compunctions. So, on that note, what would Bangladesh do? Not much. We have already a lot of problems on our plate, but the one thing that we need to do is fix our economy, and also we cannot afford to be an unwitting chessboard in regional proxy conflicts. And there is also the need for selective engagement with all the major powers based on our national interests. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I conclude.
Thank you, Parvez. You bring up very interesting points, and I take a lot of key takeaways from your brief talk. One thing we must remember, that a lot of our international engagements today and tomorrow will be shaped by nations' interest in strategic minerals. And in that strategic mineral mix, rare earth will figure very, very prominently. And that aspect of relations we are already seeing. There is a lot of emphasis on geoenergy, and the geoenergy importance and predominance is shaping many of the interactions that we see today. The global financial space is in turmoil. It is volatile, and nations are trying to push back on dollar dominance. And that is a battle that we fought in the coming years. We certainly see new actors coming into the fore. Turkey, for example, is becoming a major international player. We see UAE becoming a major player and a major actor in many conflicts. One country that was not mentioned is also an active player and a backer is Qatar. It comes with a purse in many of the conflict zones, backing some of the major actors internationally. We certainly see that in the new US NSS, or National security strategy, we certainly see that trade will become a key component of national strategy to the point of weaponization. And energy will become another key component how nations will determine their interstate relationships. So we are in a kind of a fluid stage in the international order, and something that we must all follow to safeguard our own interests. And for small nations in the global south, Bangladesh must maintain its balanced relationship, maintaining its strategic autonomy. With that, I shall now hand over to Shafqat, who I understand has the most interesting part of the story, which is tech innovation. Shafqat, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. It has indeed been a very fascinating discussion since it began in the morning. And for some of you who have joined us for the first time at a BIPSS event, Global Trends is a traditional event that we do every January. So for the last however many years, we have been meeting every year in January talking about the global trends of the year. I think a lot has already been said about the change in the international system and the monumental shifts that are taking place in international relations. I would therefore, ladies and gentlemen, like to turn your gaze away from international relations and foreign policy to a more complex world of how we are entering the technopolar world, how technology is shaping our understanding of security. We also meet at a very interesting time when we are just little more than a fortnight away from a national election. So a new government which takes over in the middle of February will have to contend with a very different international system than what we have seen before. So it is also our earnest hope that many of the points that we discuss will be shared with the incoming administration, and it will help them have an understanding about the international order or the regional order they're about to inherit. So as I said, we have now entered the technopolar order, where international relations are reorganizing around technology blocks. Alignment is now demanded not just in policy, but in infrastructure, in supply chains, and data governance. Quite often in Bangladesh, we look at security, which is often devoid of an understanding of some of these technological trends, or dare I say, we have a very classical look at security, which unfortunately is not adequate in 2026. We are entering a new arms race of sovereign technology, where fear of digital sabotage is driving countries to nationalize critical infrastructure. For instance, European low Earth orbit or IRIS. We're also entering an era where gray zone warfare or hybrid warfare would be the new norm, where countries would fight wars but remain below the threshold. When we met here 12 months ago to talk about Global Trends 2025, little did we know that 2025 would see probably the highest concentration of state-on-state conflicts in a single calendar year, where at least on 2 or 3 occasions, nuclear-powered countries were fighting one another. And I don't think we need to remind you how hairy things had become in May in particular, when India and Pakistan were locked in a duel. So what I'm trying to underscore here is that state-on-state conflict, many people had said after the Cold War ended that state-on-state conflict is a thing of the past. And then when we went through an entire phase where we thought that we were only going to deal with counterinsurgency and so on. But the reality is state-on-state conflict is here, it's back, and it is happening with greater intensity. But at the same time, gray zone warfare and hybrid warfare is becoming more prominent or becoming more commonplace. Therefore, in the case of Bangladesh, because I always feel it is very important for us to situate our conversation around Bangladesh, because that's what we are dealing with, and it's important that we have to find a context how it relates to Bangladesh. So we have to develop a greater understanding in Bangladesh about gray zone and hybrid warfare. Now, talking about technology, I think the most important aspect to remember is that in this new intelligence age, as it is called, we are shifting from generative to agentic AI. And the defining shift of 2026 is that AI no longer just creates content, but under agentic AI, it executes action autonomously. We're entering an era of post-human automation, where robotics has moved from factories to unstructured spaces in urban and military space, where the industrial robot market has now hit $16.7 million, with Asia accounting for 74% of deployment, actually leaving the West trailing. We often don't remember these things because how robotics is going to reshape the way we look at warfare, for instance. The focus, ladies and gentlemen, has moved from detection to prediction, where it creates an inequality of resilience where only wealthy nations can afford the predictive tools to stay safe. Any discussion on security and technology cannot be complete unless we talk about societal impact. And what do we see? We see a collapse of trust. Deep fakes no longer just deceive, they create paralysis. The strategic goal of disinformation is to cause citizens and leaders to doubt all verifiable truth, freezing decision-making during crises. Ever since the monsoon revolution took place in Bangladesh in August 2024, we have seen how various actors have used disinformation, misinformation systematically to reach their gains. And even as we go towards national election 2026, we're seeing how disinformation is playing out at every level. But what I'm trying to underscore here is that we are entering a period where there would be a complete epistemic breakdown, where we would see things and do not know what to believe. And for people who are trying to govern a country, this creates a huge challenge. And again, we have to fall back on technology because with AI becoming more powerful, disinformation would only become that much lethal. Many experts are now calling it a proof of life failure because artificial intelligence generated biometrics are rendering traditional identity checks obsolete. You can recreate an individual's biometric data. So how do we actually prove that a fingerprint that is used is actually my fingerprint and not created by AI? So there was a point in time where we thought biometric data, whether fingerprint or iris or what have you, would provide us with the most foolproof security, but AI is soon going to render that fairly useless. Citizens are opting out of failing state institutions and bunkerizing, there's a new term that has emerged, bunkerizing themselves with private security and off-grid technology, where the state is often, in many cases, losing its monopoly of providing security to its citizens. So the objective of all this, what I'm trying to say here, is that AI is going to reshape our understanding of life, society, and security in a way that we are not completely prepared for it. I would be remiss if I don't talk a little bit about terrorism, although we sometimes want to pretend in Bangladesh that we don't have a threat. But the threat is very much out there. Let us look at how terror groups can actually use disruptive technologies. The kind of commercial drone technology that is now available in the market, if that lands in the hands of terrorist groups, I only shudder to think the kind of damage that they would be able to do. For example, commercial quadcopters, which can overwhelm conventional air defense by attacking from multiple angles simultaneously, carrying small explosives or chemical payloads into crowded soft targets. There is also AI-driven shadow radicalization, where recruiters are using generative AI to build empathetic chatbots that operate 24/7 on encrypted apps. These bots identify vulnerable individuals and groom them with personalized, persuasive dialogue, often in local dialects, at a scale no human team could match, automating the radicalization funnel. Nearly 2 decades ago, when I first started working on terrorism and violent extremism, and we have a group in Bangladesh called Jamaatul Mujahideen Bangladesh, or JMB, and they started using video CDs. We thought that was the ultimate innovation a terror group can do. But just imagine, in a span of 19 years or 18 years, the kind of leap that has been made. The deepfake propaganda and proof of life issue that I mentioned earlier, or disinformation, can also be used or is being used by terrorist and extremist groups. And then we then get into a more complicated world of cryptocurrency, or what is now known as chain hopping, using automated chain hopping or rapidly moving funds across different blockchains and utilizing decentralized finance mixers without human intermediaries, making funds nearly impossible to trace. Because the fundamental rule of going after a terror group is follow the money. But that can now be completely redefined using cryptocurrency and blockchains. And then we get into another very important aspect, hybrid arsenals or 3D printing. With 3D printers, you can now create weapons and other things which are hybrid weapons which can be used, 3D printed by terror groups to achieve their gains. So while technology, ladies and gentlemen, is a major force multiplier for us, and we must embrace technology to remain relevant, technology or the disruptive aspects of technology is something, as practitioners of security, we must always remember. An aspect of security which is highly pertinent for Bangladesh but often does not get the kind of focus it deserves in the international security discourse is environment. We are no longer looking at 1.5 degrees Celsius as a target. The focus has now shifted to local economic survival, where climate policy, unfortunately, is no longer global, but has become entirely driven by immediate national interests. And as this global race for strategic minerals intensifies, we also have to see how it will impact on our understanding of environmental security. Climate change is now a productivity killer, where extreme heat, according to economists, is causing structural GDP losses. So as the climate warms, I mean, we are on the 26th day of January and we already need air conditioning. So I don't think I need to belabor on the point that how climate change has happened. I still remember growing up in Bangladesh where winter would persist until late February, and those days are long gone. But also we have to look at the green resources war that is emerging, where transition to clean energy could also lead to a geopolitical flashpoint as powers are fighting for control of green minerals as well, such as lithium and gallium, which are dirty to extract but essential to apply. So there is a correlation between climate change, environmental security, and this acquisition of strategic minerals. So to sum up, I would say in 2026, we are in the era of global integration has in many ways definitively ended, replaced by what I would like to call fragmented reality, defined by transactionism, sovereignty, and survival. We are no longer facing isolated risks, but what I would say a convergence of breakdown. The geopolitical order is fracturing into blocks, the climate is breaching operational thresholds, and the digital world, as I said earlier, is suffering an epistemic collapse of trust. So we are entering a very complex milieu in 2026, and as this nation, whose democratic aspirations have long been suppressed, finds a form of utterance on the 12th of February, these are some of the issues that our new government will have to deal with. I'll end there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shafqat. You really paint a picture of a world where new technologies are reshaping everything, and we are truly in uncharted waters. We are first graduating from artificial intelligence to superintelligence, and we really don't know what to do with it, because it is reshaping not only international relations and conflicts and war, it is completely reshaping the way we live, interact with one another, the way we work, everything in our aspects of life. Nations are going to fight for data sovereignty, and that is going to become the norm. If you heard Elon Musk yesterday in Davos, he has very clearly indicated that the robot population in the next decade is going to be higher than the human population. So if we live in a 9 billion world, we'll have more than 9 billion robots in the world. So that is the kind of world we are entering. And it is also bringing impacts on the value chain and the trade chains and the supply chains that we are accustomed to. Nations no longer depend on unfriendly nations for supply chains, so we are seeing a trend towards nearshoring and friendshoring. And those are the aspects of international communication and trade that is going to affect our lives. So we are in a new world, and I would want you to embrace the new world with new thoughts. With that, I'll open the floor to your questions and comments. Feel free to ask our panelists anything. Please indicate yourself. I will give you the floor, and when you get the floor, please introduce yourself and ask a brief question. I will first go to the rear, the hand raised there.
Thank you, sir. My name is Shamim Arashuli. I work at Internews. Actually, it is not a question. It's actually I want to supplement Shafqat Bhai. Before that, my apologies. I'm going to praise myself a little. I was the first Erasmus Mundus scholar who studied war and conflict with major information war. And I had to study very hard how information was using that time to recruit terrorists. How they recruit members using social media platforms. At that time, Telegram, Signal, that were thought that very safe, but not anymore. And Shafqat Bhai said about the development of artificial intelligence that they can nowadays even can, the fingerprints, they can replicate or create fingerprints of you. So the safety and security, while we using digital technology, we thought that we are safe. It is actually not. And that is why when we organize digital safety and security training, we always advise to please don't use fingerprint, facial feature or anything. Better use like a different kind or set of password that use different kinds of character and words. And now we are seeing what I have studied in 2007 in Bangladesh, that is actually took place massively. The misinformation and disinformation situation in Bangladesh is really very bad. In a previous period, we had a project where we used to monitor 6 social media platforms, and we monitored how disinformation, misinformation, propaganda, and international influence affecting our nation. Right now, we do not have that project anymore, but our team still independently monitor, and the result is really very terrible. The, terrorist groups or who used to work against the country, they are technologically very ahead of the state.
I've got your point.
So we have to be very careful, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Shahid.
I'm a Major General retired Shahid. I don't have any question actually. I just wanted to start whatever that Dr. Abbasi said about the Saudis' involvement. I just wanted to add part 2 of that one. Unfolding of Saudi hard power just this month is a very positive thing about, especially around that region. Especially I'll say that Yemen at this moment, it was 3 parts, now it has got only 2 parts. STC is gone, number one. Number two is that all the major ports which UAEs were controlling is gone. Then Skoda Island, the most strategic point is gone. Number three is that the Somaliland, if you remember, Somaliland was, it had the Israelis and UAE had the right to land their aircraft and having a berthing rights also. That is also gone. So within just 1 month, the Saudi assertion of their power has created so many dimensions. About this UAE, I'll say that my personal experience that UAE is such a tiny country, but it has got such a large influence around North Africa, Sahel region, including Central Africa, and what to talk about Syria and other places. So assertion of Saudis in this month, I see is a little bit positive, especially for the betterment of that region. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Ambassador Kamrul.
Sir, I have two questions, one for Mr. Abbasi and the other for Dr. Saima. The first question is that Mr. Abbasi raised it, and we also know that currently there is a strong polarization in the Middle East involving South Asia. One is Saudi-Pakistan military agreement, and now Turkey is given indication that they are also going to join. And then India-Israel has since BJP came to power, they have developing relations, and they have very strong relations. Now, 2 or 3 days ago, during the visit of UAE president, UAE indicated that they are also going into a kind of military understanding or agreement with India. And again, UAE is a signatory to Abraham Accord. So, and now I want to bring that into Bangladesh context. As we have seen in the last couple of years, in the Bangladeshi politics, rightly or wrongly, external powers are involved in a big way. Now the polarization in the Middle East, which involves 2 South Asian countries, whether that will have any kind of impact in Bangladesh politics. And to Dr. Saima, that is regarding Ukrainian war that you have raised in your presentation. I mean, so far the indication from Russia is that they will not back out from the war until the decision comes according to their terms. And then President Trump, he frequently changes his position, and he is very much, I think, accommodating Russian president. So my question is that, do you think that this war is going to be over very soon? And is it going to be resolved in the Russian terms?
All right. Dr. Manzoor, you have the floor.
Thank you. I am Dr. Manzoor Chaudhary. I had a question already. Ambassador Kamrul has explained. In that line, my question to the panelists, especially to Mr. Parvez Abbasi, these global trends, there are several aspects of these global trends. How it is specifically affecting our Bangladesh, and also more specifically, is there any effect on the Rohingya issue? Thank you.
Thank you. Air Vice Marshal Mahmood.
Thank you, sir. I would like to thank all the panel members for giving us such a comprehensive understanding of the global trends. But, sir, I think there is one point that we are missing. Whenever we are talking about the United States of America occupying land, it does so with the help of the military power. And whenever we talk about techno world, we also understand that the military is at the foremost, in fact, pillar of doing this kind of innovation. I mean, whichever military is strong, you'll find that that particular military is also very strong in its scientific and technological advancements. Whenever we talk about artificial intelligence, we have to keep in mind that there are two prominent subjects in which we have to build the expertise of the students right from the primary level. One is maths, the other one is your physics, and people would also like to include philosophy for that. But that has to be built up right from the primary school till university level. Somehow or the other, we have not addressed these issues, and we have ignored for too long a time the technological power of the military. Any military which is strong enough, you'll find that it is not huge in number, but it is qualitatively very brilliant. Take the case of Israel, take the case of Pakistani Air Force, take the case of Singapore. Somehow or the other, we will not be able to tackle this situation in future unless and otherwise we strengthen the military power. And making military strong means we are also making the country strong in science and technology. And if you are advanced in science and technology, you are also advanced in your wealth making. This is my point, sir.
Thank you. Ambassador Shamim.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll be very short because of my throat issue. Thanks firstly to the three panel speakers for the excellent presentations. I will start by saying that what Dr. Parvez Abbasi said towards the end of his presentation really caught up with me, that Bangladesh, with its stature, doesn't have much to do in the present emerging global trends and the prevailing trends. So I would rather like to relate to how much Bangladesh may be affected by these trends, like Bangladesh being a small country, not an economic powerhouse, not a military giant. I mean, talking about global trends, it feels a bit expensive and staggering. So what might happen to Ukraine or Greenland within a few weeks will not impact Bangladesh as much as a sudden deterioration in our relations with India might, or certain developments in the areas in Myanmar that are adjacent to Bangladesh might. So I thought that if we could sort of further mutate, fragment our discussions, but I mean the panel discussions have already been made, that would have been more relevant to this seminar. And thanks once again to BIPSS for organizing this. Thank you.
Thank you. I see a hand in that corner. Yes. Oh, Zahir. Sorry, I didn't see your face.
Good morning, if it is still morning. Good afternoon, really. I am General Zahir, former Commandant of National Defense College, Bangladesh. First of all, I want to make just few remarks and then take a response from the discussants. First of all, I see that the strategic anarchy is back. The Westphalian concept of national state and sovereignty is gone. The Kantian philosophy of a rule-based world is shattered. And I feel that, again, the issue of AI, who controls AI, who regulates AI in the absence of a supranational organization, as we see that United Nations has become irrelevant, not dormant. I don't know it is already dead or not. It's like it is dead as SARC is. And under all this situation, what I feel that 2026, what is going to really happen is break and make. And this will depend on the middle powers, this will depend on the BRICS, and this will also depend on other countries who are powerful but do not belong to these groupings. And what I see that the small states their security is in jeopardy, and countries who are not militarily strong but possess rare earth and other strategic minerals, they are vulnerable. And so 2026 will be a year of real confusion and chaos. and at the same time make and break. So I seek your comments. Thank you.
Thank you, General. Thank you for your comment. We shall now go back to our panelists for this cluster of questions, then again come back to you. We'll start with Shafqat first.
I want to begin by talking a little bit about the very pertinent remark by Air Vice Marshal Mahmood. We need to take a fresh look at how we structure and equip our military, because I think it's very pertinent, as Ambassador Shamim said, and we should also situate our conversation on Bangladesh and see how these global trends shape us or help us. As a new government takes over, and I have been saying this even when the interim government took over, one of the fundamental tasks before that new government would be to create a comprehensive national security strategy, which this country has never had. And we need to see that within our limited resources, how we can expand or develop our military power. Today's military power is not defined just by manpower or human resources. And here I want to quote the Chief of the General Staff of the British Army, General Sir Rowley Walker, who uses the term doubling the lethality, because he cannot expand the number of troops, but what Sir Rowley says that he can actually double the lethality by bringing technology as a force multiplier. That is the kind of route that we should also take. South Asian militaries are always going to be manpower heavy because we have large populaces, but at the same time, we really have to see how technology can be a force multiplier. We also have to see whether our traditional understanding of what is big ticket items for purchase is what should dominate our thinking, or we should look at better mobility, increase firepower, and things like that. For example, in the army, and I'm the son of a gunner, so I will be remiss if I don't talk about artillery. We have to take a really close, and there are several gunners in the room, so they'll bear me out. We have to take a close look at how we are modernizing our artillery. We have made a major innovation. We have decoupled artillery and air defense, but we have to really see how we augment both field artillery and air defense, because recent conflicts in this region have shown us the vitality of both field artillery and air defense in modern warfare. So I think these are some of the things we need to look at. To all serving and retired military officers in the room, with the utmost respect, I want to make a submission. We also need to move away from this idea that if you want to talk about defense and military or security issues, you have to have a rank before your name. The greatest strategists and military analysts in this world are civilians. Sir Lawrence Friedman or Sir Michael Walker are cases in point. We have a lot of trained resource in this country who have studied strategic studies, who have studied defense studies, who have studied information warfare. We are not utilizing them. It is very heartening that all three services now have their own think tanks, which is a major development. We need to harness, and we have the Naval Think Tanks head very kindly present with us today. We have to harness these think tanks. We have to harness our national think tank beasts, revitalize them. New Bangladesh, under whoever is elected to office, must have a new look at security. The old days of friendship with all and malice to none are over.
That puts me on the spot. Shafqat very proudly stated that he's the son of a gunner. I'm sorry to disappoint. I'm only the son of a former wrestler and bodybuilder. You won't have guessed if you had seen me. We're seeing now. Jokes aside. Now, but we are talking about very serious issues. So, two of the questions are interrelated, so I'll take them in a clump. And the third question, those that were specifically addressed to me. So I believe Ambassador Kamrul and again, Professor and Dr. Manzoor, both the questions are similar trajectory. So what has been stated, and again, even now, we often are, what would I say, very diplomatic or very shy about bringing those countries or naming those countries. The question that's at the heart of the matter is that Bangladesh in recent times has, we we openly discuss about, again, the contestation between the United States of America and China and Bangladesh, but we veer away for various reasons about talking about the Indo-Pakistan tussle for influence, I won't say supremacy, for influence in Bangladesh. Now, the fault is not with either India's or Pakistan's. It is us. Because we have an identity crisis. Because it's just like I remember an old friend of mine back in the university, and again, this is just with due apologies in advance. So she was a nice girl, but she was always confused. So she kept coming back and forth between two of her boyfriends. So the poor chaps never knew that when one is the current one and one is the former one. So the same thing applies to the Indian and Pakistani diplomats over here. Because a few years ago, the Indian diplomats were the toast of the town. So again, the government and the government of Bangladesh could not get enough of Indian diplomats and Indian activists, and Pakistan was a taboo. That is the bottom line, and that was a completely unnecessary initiative of this, the former government. But again, as a knee-jerk reaction to overcompensate, now we are going out of the way to woo the Pakistanis and irritate India beyond a point where we do not have the capacity that if they are goaded on retaliating us, what will happen? So the fault is not with India or Pakistan. The fault is with, again, us not identifying our own strategic priorities. And this is where the third question also comes in, and this was also raised, is that's why I raised Carl Schmitt's, again, great open spaces. Each country, whether you like it or not, sovereignty, and we talk about economic sovereignty, we talk about military sovereignty. What economic sovereignty do we have when we have a $5.5 billion loan with IMF? They have control over our economic policy making. What sovereignty do we have when we have a tax repatriation or again foreign direct investment special rules waiver carried out for our investors? We don't. We don't choose to discuss about this. Or when we go for regional connectivity initiatives, or when we want to go into RCEP, which we plan to, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, we will be weaving away many of our local economic aspects. Now, coming back to the issue over here, in Russia, many people had stated that, again, Ukraine and the Russia-Ukraine conflict, or special war, or war interests, special operations. Now that was a problem, but we have to understand that, again, Eastern Europe and Central Asia is within Russia's sphere of interest, whether you like it or not. Conversely, again, this is the part where I'll manage to alienate both my Western and non-Western friends. The idea is that Trump's operation in Venezuela is nothing uncommon. There have been 100 direct military and indirect operations of the United States of America in the Americas, South America or Latin America, the past 100 years. This was done with the minimal amount of bloodshed. And the one thing that we also always mention, there's also, why don't you go under security umbrella? Well, the Cuban Security Intelligence Service was there for Maduro. The Chinese and the Russians were supposed to help the Venezuelans. Nobody came. Or for that matter, for Ukraine. Yes, everyone is propping up Ukraine with weapons from the West and so on and so forth. It's Ukrainians who are dying on the battlefield. So one needs to know our strengths before we actually commit to certain foreign policies which are basically dictated by populist agenda. That is something that I have a lot of problems with, because you have YouTube influencers dictating what our foreign policy choices should be. With due respect to them, then what is the problem with such analysts over here? So when populist ideology basically pushes foreign policy choices, that's something wrong. So this is another aspect that we need to really, really figure in. And vis-a-vis the Saudi Arabia, just 1 minute, sir. The Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, Turkey combined, that's an old operation in process. Saudi Arabia has long outsourced its defense needs, security needs to Pakistan. The one balancing a new entrant over here is Turkey. And over here on the other side, the UAE, Israel and India axis has also worked out a fair share of influence. But with Saudi Arabia, there's a delicate balancing. Saudi Arabia's greatest economic reliance right now after China is India. Whereas in terms of security cooperation, it is basically Pakistan. Saudi Arabia has its own balancing aspects. And there is a rivalry between UAE and Saudi Arabia where Qatar and Turkey are taking advantage. But each are driven by their own national interests. My issue is with us. What is our national interest? Have you been able to identify that? Thank you.
Thanks, Saima.
I will start answering the question that came to me, is Ukraine war going to end soon? Or is it going to end according to Russian terms? So Russian term was that it wants the lands it has occupied from Ukraine. And USA at this moment has kind of shown in its interest to give that to Russia in the peace talks, and also kind of give the idea to Ukraine that either they sign or they lose this. If they don't sign, then they are not going to receive any kind of military assistance from US. This kind of a threat actually is there. On the other hand, this is a complex problem where France and UK or entire Europe is very worried about Russia's intentions of conquering entire Ukraine afterwards. That's why they are saying that what would happen in the post-war Ukraine if the war ends now, and once a kind of security guarantee, deploy some troops over there so that Russia cannot actually conquer the whole country. So I think that this freezes the situation, and it's not, it doesn't indicate anything, no indication that this war is going to end soon. It is going to continue because the conflicts are all over there. Europe is not ready to give up on Ukraine. And USA, though, has shown its interest to become close to President Putin and bring a peace deal that would satisfy Russia's interests, but and also is willing to pressurize Ukraine, President Zelensky, to accept the peace deal. But Ukraine has Europe in its side, and that's why I think there is no indication at this moment that this is going to end very soon. So this is my answer for this, and I don't know whether this question is for me, how global trends are affecting Bangladesh and how Rohingya issue is going to be affected. Was it for me? But I can actually. Was it for me or someone else? Or it wasn't for me? Okay. I think that it's affecting Bangladesh a lot because if there is a trend of undermining international law, international cooperation, and there is more emphasis on coercive military actions, coercive diplomacy, then smaller countries like Bangladesh and all the militarily weak countries are going to be very much vulnerable in terms of having big neighbors and their intentions and attacks from them or manipulation from those countries. So it is a very risky world for Bangladesh now. This is how it affects. Bangladesh has been under a dictatorship for a long, long time now, and that has put Bangladesh into a very, I would say, fragile situation because it's kind of isolated in terms of having very good allies or very, strong partnerships with multiple countries, which is, I think, required now. So I would say that it would be better for Bangladesh to move towards those countries that could help Bangladesh economy and seek a stronger partnership with them, both militarily and economically. Another thing is that the Rohingya issue is a total mess for Bangladesh. There wasn't any clear policy what Bangladesh was going to do about it. And since Bangladesh remained a kind of in a very unclear position whether it's going to involve a third party in negotiation with the Myanmar government, or whether it's going to do it bilaterally, what it's going to do, how much involvement the UN is going to have here in resolving the Rohingya issue. That's why it's kind of a limbo thing. Bangladesh did not really do any progress in resolving the Rohingya problem. And right now, the way UN Security Council and also the General Assembly is working, Rohingya issue is not getting enough of an attention at all. So I think that this global trend of a great power rivalry is going to affect very adversely in terms of resolving the Rohingya refugee problem for Bangladesh. Thank you.
Thank you, Saima. We are almost coming to the end of our session, so I will take last 2-3 questions. Admiral Khalid.
Thank you very much. Just I would raise a small query at the beginning, and then I would, share some of my thoughts about the maritime trends that is likely to be
Please be brief.
experienced in the near future. So first, my question is, we can see that globally there is increasing trend of shying away from, multilateralism or the plurilateralism, and preferring interest-based small unilateral, like the Colombo Security Conclave or the Goa Maritime Conclave, something like that. And so my point is that the concept of the IORA, the Indian Ocean Rim Association, or the Indian Ocean Naval Symposium, which really we, in both the organizations we are member, we really had a lot of hope and aspiration because of the maritime development. So do you think that IORA, IONS, and this kind of multilateral organs are becoming irrelevant in near future? Because we can see that even the latest, if we see the US policies, emphasizing more on the Western Hemisphere. So Mr. Parvez said about Donro, the Monroe 2.0, whatever we say. So that means the emphasis might be decreasing on this part of the world. So regarding the maritime issues, just...
Would you please keep the microphone close?
Yeah. So some of the points which have been discussed, the first thing is the geo-economic confrontation as a weapon. Then the emission trading system of EU, or the environmental policies, like the green compliances, we discussed about the AI bubble, digitalization. So all these are likely to affect the maritime trade, the shipping and all. So the problems in the Horn of Africa, because of the Houthi crisis and all. So the rerouting and diverting the routes is going to be the new normal. A ship taking the time going through the Suez Canal from the Gulf to the European countries takes about 9 times more longer route going by the Cape of Good Hope. So this is going to be the new normal. So there is another concept of the dark ships, or the dark fleet, carrying the illegal oils, especially the Russian oils. So this is going to be going to remain. The trend is there. About 27% of the tanker fleet was the dark ships in 2027, and who really try to evade because, the AI satellite, those, some of the instruments, they just switch off and try to evade. So these are, General Munir mentioned about the friendshoring, because that is one of the issues that because of the protectionist, the trend that we have, and there is more and more, trying to accommodate the supply chain and other things, the manufacturing hubs, towards where we are friendly to the countries. About the EU trading, the emission control policies that I mentioned, there is likely to be more conflicting scenario among the global standards vis-a-vis the regional standards. The local regional standards like EU is much more tougher, stronger than the global compliance regulations. So this is something going to be a problem. Ports are going to be considered more and more as an strategic asset, going to be more smart port, more, digitalization, taking away from because of the decarbonization concept, the cybersecurity issues, AI-based instruments and all. And in the shipping world, the Middle East has become one of the important, technologically advanced, the global shipping hub, the Middle East. There was a time when we considered about Singapore and other places, the shipping hubs are going to be shifted towards the Middle East more. I will mention about the Hong Kong Convention. That is one of the conventions because of this, we know the ship breaking years or the ship recycling. So this has already been implemented, and this is something going to be very important for us because the Hong Kong Convention, as per that convention, we are likely to have all our 150 more ship breaking years green. You have to make it by 2030. So that's an obligation. And there is something called the BBNJ, the Biodiversity Beyond the National Jurisdiction. This is also called the High Seas Treaty. Why I'm mentioning that? Because this has just been implemented last 17th of January. It has come in force. Bangladesh signed in BBNJ. And as per that, that there is a 30-30 rule. 30% of the high seas is going to be, declared as, marine protected areas by 2030. There's a 30-30 rule. So these are some of the issues that I thought that I would bring in front of you. And so as I mentioned that the ships are going to be more smart, and I think these are some of the trends. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Admiral. The next question, our friend from beautiful Kosovo.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, panelists, for wonderful elaboration of the Global Trends 2026, which we are already in. I would like to ask a very specific question. A new international organization has just been, sorry for my voice because I'm a bit, I lost my voice. A new international organization has just been established, the Board of Peace. I would like to hear how this organization is perceived by the panelists or by South Asia, and in the context of Rohingyas and the aims of this organization, which Kosovo has also signed. Your suggestions, whether you recommend Bangladesh to join as well. Thank you.
Thank you. My apology to all others who wanted to ask questions. I'm afraid we are running out of time and we have to end it here. So I'll go back to the panelists for their end thoughts, very briefly. Saima, you can start.
Some countries joined Board of Peace, but many countries did not, especially many European countries, actually powerful countries, did not join Board of Peace. So in that way, I think it's difficult to say whether in future Bangladesh will join or not, but at this moment, I think Bangladesh should not join Board of Peace because it looks like it is something that came up as a substitute to the UN body, Security Council, and it would work like Security Council, but it has a broad mandate, but at the same time, it says that it will talk about the Gaza problem mainly, Israel and Palestinian problem mainly. But it has some confusion within it, whether or not it will stay with its focus, keep its focus on Gaza alone, or whether or not it's going to talk about all the rest of the matters of the world, all the security and dispute issues in future. So in that way, it's kind of a confusing board. Many European countries have rejected the invitation to join the Board of Peace. And Bangladesh has, as a nation, kept its support for Palestine and their freedom, their human rights and all that. So in that way, whether or not Bangladesh will join the Board of Peace remains uncertain, and probably it doesn't make any sense for Bangladesh. It would require Bangladesh to change its policy a lot, and probably this is the big reason that Bangladesh is not going to join the Board of Peace like many other nations, because the intention of the Board of Peace is not very, very clear. Israel is also a part of it, the Board of Peace. It has joined, Israel has joined there, Netanyahu has joined here and joined there. And this is the main reason, probably, that Bangladesh is not going to join the Board of Peace. Another thing is that the Board of Peace, if the Board of Peace is not going to have enough country members, then its ability to work would be very limited, and its effectiveness will be very limited too. In that way, I think that the world still needs to see how it comes out, how strongly it comes out, and whether or not it's going to work at all. It depends on the acceptance of the countries, and most countries did not accept it yet.
Thank you. Parvez?
Yes, quickly on the uptake, I think I'll focus on just one area, that's the Rohingya issue, and Professor Munir also raised it. Very simple, we all know that the US, or for a time period, there was a degree of interest, and actually they were the first country which actually came out and spoke about the plight of the Rohingyas and extended support to the Bangladeshi government back in the time. But again, for various reasons, we did not pursue in internationalizing this issue beyond a certain point. With me, the issue is very simple. If we want to go with actually taking a more proactive stance, yes, we need to get the Rohingyas back to the country that they came from, which is Myanmar or Burma, whichever name you feel comfortable. But the problem is, right now, the Arakan army, which controls 90% of Rakhine state and also is in active control of the Chin state with other factions. Now, this in itself is a non-state actor. Now, and they are even more xenophobic about the Rohingyas than even the Bamar-led Tatmadaw itself. So that is a big problem. Now, what options do we have? A, do we actually prop up the Rohingyas like ARSA and RSO? But that also basically extends the threat of retaliation. Already we have degrees, a lot of shelling, and a few people lost their lives also on the border. So what do we gain from here? Now, the gain is that, yes, if we could actually use, and I'm saying this very bluntly, if we use Rakhine state as a sphere of influence, all for it. Can we use the strategic resources of Rakhine state? I'm all for it. Then we put boots on the ground. But then you run against a very organized militia that has been in the combat sphere for 20 years, and which will be then, we'll be isolating our neighbors and near neighbors. That includes China, that includes Russia, that includes India. And there is also the blowback of the impact that it will have on the Chittagong Hill tracts, which we should not forget. And the US has, with a lot of priorities, so again, if this is a US-driven interest issue over here, now where do we get our support from? The problem is this: I have no problem one way or the other, because just look at what happened in Afghanistan. The Pakistanis propped up the Taliban for years together, and now the Talibans are killing more Pakistani forces at the border than again probably the Pakistanis have lost to the Indians in recent conflicts. And the Afghanistan and the Indians are drawing close. So be careful whom you want to foster, because eventually those allies that you think that will do your bidding might become your strongest opponents in the near future. So that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Parvez, Shafqat.
I want to focus on just one aspect, and all eyes are now on 12th of February. And what is our expectation when it comes to global trends or security under a new government? Our expectation is, as I said a few moments ago, a fresh look at our security, foreign policy based on persuasion of national interest, because the only thing that is permanent and eternal in international relations is national interest, and a non-emotional, non-populism-driven look at security and foreign policy. For too long, we have either been driven by emotion, or we have been driven by populism fueled by YouTube evangelists. Time is for us to take control of our security, of our foreign policy, and really give us a foreign policy and security which a post-monsoon revolution new Bangladesh demands. That is our aspiration from the new government. And the next time we will meet under a new administration, so I hope many of our aspirations will slowly be translated into policy. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Shafqat. I think I kind of echo your aspirations. And this has been a fascinating discussion, as always. So I will not try to summarize it for the interest of time. In the end, I would only like to say that the future is not something that simply happens to us. It is something that we help create or shape by sharing knowledge, building partnerships, and thinking boldly. And that is exactly why we assembled here today, to discuss and find out ways how Bangladesh, as a small southern state, can reshape or help shape the new order that is coming and adapt ourselves to that new order. I thank you all for being here with us today to discuss on these very interesting points. I would like to remind you that please come back to our roundtable in early March, when we shall be talking about recommendations for a new set of international foreign policy and security order for Bangladesh. And I can assure you we'll have many of the members of the government present with us in that roundtable. So once again, thank you all very much. Please join us for a cup of coffee outside. Thank you.